Okay, ready. So another episode of Nadi Digital Economy Malaysia. My name is Karamjit Singh, and with me is my colleague Dzof Azmi, and we're both going to do what we do every week, which has been like for I think coming up to 4 months now, right, Dzof?
Can we get an anniversary cake, Karam?
6 months. We'll do one for 6 months, which may be longer than the current government stays in power before the next election. But anyway, we're gonna pick 4 stories, maybe 3 this week, and talk about them. And of course, this week being today is Saturday, and yesterday being of course it was like just at around midnight of Friday, where Grab, the Southeast Asian unicorn champion, was listed on the Nasdaq market in the US. And it was the first time that a Southeast Asian startup had listed on the Nasdaq, but the listing ceremony was held in Southeast Asia. And it was held in Singapore, which is the headquarters of Grab. Although Grab started in Malaysia, Anthony and Hui Ling, the co-founders, are Malaysian. And when I say there's some conversation there that actually Anthony is Singaporean now. I have not really confirmed it, but it's not the point of the conversation for today's one. Is to actually hail their achievement, and you actually have to take your hats off to the two of them for driving a company that was essentially just an app company helping you get a taxi, right, to come to you, right, without the hassle and the pain points of all of you who in Malaysia who have used taxis before. Before Grab became established in the market, you all know how fun it was to try to get a taxi, or to put your hand out like that and to watch an empty taxi driver. The driver just look at you as he's driving by you, right? And you have no idea why he or she, mostly he, actually not she to be fair, right, decided not to stop for you, right? And you think, okay, the next one, maybe you just got to tuck in your shirt a bit more, because maybe you look a bit unkempt, right? They want to take this tall, bearded guy, right, in the taxi. So all kinds of fun scenarios there, right? So they came and literally forced the profession to professionalize. But obviously, they have moved way beyond just helping you get a taxi, right? They offer you now, they call it mobility services, where you can get, maybe your next door neighbor is driving a Grab, right? It's helping people get alternative income, flexible income, right? And you can use all the buzzwords you want around this. They've built that, and of course they're in food spaces now, delivering food for you, and they're doing many things, and they're doing micro lending also. Although I heard that they've stopped doing micro lending in Malaysia for their drivers. They're doing it for SMEs, which is very smart of them to do. And of course, then micro insurance, right? When you got a base of at least, I think they say they have a base of like millions of drivers in the region. And these are people who are generally in your B40 category or your lower middle income category, right? The vast majority. Obviously, there's a need sometimes for short-term loan and all that. So they're trying to do the long tail. You don't have the long tail economics, right, of the internet businesses anymore, but they're trying to tap the long tail, right? Many things they can do. And by the way, DNA, if I were to step out of my house now and just look outside my window, I can see the building which is called Plaza 33, where Grab used to have their office, but right next to it is a Nissan showroom, and that is where in section 13 PJ, for those of you who are Malaysians and are familiar with the location of PJ, in section 13 PJ, there is a Nissan showroom. It's been there for like at least a decade and a half, if not more. Grab started from a storeroom at the back, right? And when I had one conversation with Anthony in the early days, he said, hey, that's where I'm at, we're hustling, we're trying to make things work. They started there. This conversation was like in late 2012. He was still behind the scenes in Grab. If you see the early articles that DNA wrote in 2012, because we were launched in May 2012, the early articles we wrote did not feature Anthony Tan at all. He only came in early 2013 onwards, where he and Hui Ling then decided to leave their salary jobs, right, and jump in and try and drive Grab, right, to the next level. But very important to know that in Grab's journey is that they knocked on doors of Malaysian investors and nobody bid, right? They may have had 1 or 2 angel investors, I don't know, but the big break they got was when Vertex Ventures from Singapore came in to invest in them. And then Vertex again came in to invest in them in their Series A. And I was in Singapore in early 2014, where the deal was announced, and I had an interview with this gentleman called Chua Kee Lock. And you go to DNA, if you type in My Taxi, okay, because back then in Malaysia, Grab was still known as My Taxi. In Singapore, it was known as I think it's called Grab Taxi then, okay. And I spoke to this Chua Kee Lock, and I said, hey, why did you all invest in Grab when it's just literally a taxi app, and the business model was not there yet? And he said that, his own words, right? He said that we invest in potential champions which have developed new technology platforms or business models that are disrupting incumbents in their old and inefficient ways of doing business. And he told me that even though they don't have a business model yet, we are confident they can get the business model right. So imagine the risk appetite of this gentleman, right, and his team to say that, let's bet on them anyway, maybe they can get something right. Because they went to Khazanah in Malaysia. I know Anthony also went to Tony Fernandez to invest, and they all turn him away, and I don't blame them, right? Because even DNA, when we have a product called Digitality 50 that we do every 2 years. In our first edition, we didn't feature Anthony because we're saying that, hey, me and my team of editors saying, hey, it's only an app, can they really make a difference in Malaysia's digital economy? We said no. So even seasoned tech journalists discounted, him and Hui Ling. And voila, look at where they are now. And I just want to quickly read, because you can go to the article, but I asked Chua Kee Lock, right? What convinced you to invest in Grab? And I used the word Grab Taxi because they're still based in Malaysia. They had not shifted. They announced that they were shifting their location, headquarters to Singapore. And he said that when we first met Anthony, we saw a young man with passion, drive, and hunger to succeed. We are impressed with his strong desire to build a long-lasting enterprise with both profit and social agenda. And I think that social agenda, Anthony doesn't get enough credit for. And if those of you who had seen the live stream at like 10:45 p.m. on a Thursday night in Malaysia, you'd have seen Anthony, emotional and saying that we couldn't have done it without you. And he kept pointing this way, and that way, right? So it was to say that, each and every one of you were part of our success, and that social element. And he talked about the story of this gentleman, who told him that, the alongs were threatening me regularly because I couldn't make my payments. And thanks to me driving for Grab, within a few months or whatever, I was able to pay off the alongs and at some point able to pay for his daughter's university education. He did not mention where this person was. I guarantee you it's probably in Malaysia. And he didn't want to mention Malaysia. I found that interesting. And then after, he gave another example, and he said this was in Indonesia. So he did not talk about Singapore also, but he mentioned Indonesia. So it could be coincidental, and I may be making too much of it, but I find it interesting that they did not credit his his early history in Malaysia, and they still got big operations in Malaysia, right? Malaysia is still an important market for them. I won't say enough because I won't say anymore. Just to congratulate him and Hui Ling, and I know Dzof, you want to add a few words, but all of you who want to read about the early history of Grab, you can go to DNA, type in Grab Taxi or My Taxi. You'll see stories from 2012, 2013, before anyone else was covering them in the region. Dzof, over to you.
Oh, just a very quick statement. I think sometimes when I point to a story that I think is an interesting story to talk about, you will sort of reject the story saying, yes, but this is not a Malaysian company, this is a Singaporean company, for example.
Yes.
I go, really? And then I realize that's true. Here is an example of a Singaporean company that we're talking extensively about, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the conversations I'm seeing on social media, on Reddit, and a little bit on Twitter, is that Malaysia was not able to hold on to this talent, and this talent had run away to Singapore, and only then they became a success. And you're shaking your head, Karam.
Yeah, I'll let you finish first. Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is that first, things are never quite as simple or straightforward. Because as a guy that worked with Talent Corp and looking at the situation why Malaysians choose to work in Singapore, it's never quite as simple as Malaysia bad, Singapore good.
Yeah.
It's generally a bit more complex, a bit more nuanced than that. I've always understood that the reason why Grab moved to Singapore was simply because of it's to do with their financial arrangements and how
Absolutely,
they were
absolutely.
trying to source.
They only went called themselves Singapore after they got this investment from Vertex Ventures, right? The Series A, right? Somebody put it was, I think they never announced the amount, but I think it was like at least a 10 million US dollar, and Vertex Ventures was the lead investor, right? Which means that they were the single largest investor in that round. Doesn't mean they were 51% or 50.1%, but they were the single largest. And I think, of course, you're giving somebody money like that, unproven yet, you're taking a big risk. Of course, you would say that, look, I want you to relocate your operation headquarters to Singapore, and you're calling yourself a Singapore company. Cannot blame them for that at all. Brunei government could have done the same thing, and Anthony Tan today would have been hailing himself as a Brunei company, right? So if you're trying in your own country, you don't get the money. Nobody is taking the risk on you. Go whoever is giving you the risk, and if they got terms with their commitment, their funding, right? There's nothing wrong with that. As an entrepreneur, your responsibility is to try to make your company work. Of course, Anthony could have been very naive and say, no, I want to, I've got the Malaysian flag tattooed over my chest, and I'm going to turn Vertex Ventures or, whoever it was, right, X Venture down. I'm not going to, at the risk of being not a Malaysian company, turn them down. I'm going to try to mati-mati look for money in Malaysia. Chances are he would have run out of cash for sure, right? And fail, and nobody would have given him a medal or, hey, Anthony, here, Pingat Jasa Bhakti, or Tan Sri Ship for being a pure, true Malaysian. No.
Well, you kind of took some of the words right out of my mouth. The other point I wanted to make, Karam, the other point I want to make is, of course, Singapore is not the market. Southeast Asia is the market.
Yeah,
right? We're not looking at that.
Yes. So,
so
Anthony also has helped, right? Because Tony Fernandez, I think, was in the US recently, and he did not tweet. He's no more on Twitter. I think he shared on his Instagram or whichever social platform to thank Anthony for helping to raise the profile of Southeast Asia. And again, Anthony, throughout his 5-minute speech, right, talked about Southeast Asia. This is where it's at. So definitely we are, they said there was US had a Southeast Asia pivot when Obama was the president. It never happened. It was only in words. But there is definitely a Southeast Asia pivot now. And the investors there, especially the venture capital, the risk capital, they are definitely looking at this region now, and it will benefit, and all tides will rise. And by the way, at the very tail end, Anthony also mentioned that, all boats will rise, right, with the tide going up. So he has done an incredible service to all entrepreneurs here. A lot more money is looking in this region. So, we'll wait and see what else they can do. But of course, the journey ahead is not easy, because they've got two very huge companies, butting heads to them, and will not give them 1 inch, which is the GoTo, right, which is the Gojek and Tokopedia merger, right? They are not going to give him an inch in Indonesia. And of course, you've got C, which is out of Singapore but owned by a Chinese entrepreneur. They are also strong in this region, and it could be a matter of time before they already entered the food delivery business. At least in Malaysia, they just did a few weeks ago. I guarantee you, with the large cachet of cash they have, right, and how they're doing, their business is doing well, they're probably going to go enter into other markets also to compete with Grab, and GoTo. So these three titans will be duking it out until they are bloodied, and they sit down and they say, hey, nobody's giving us a medal for driving consumer value. Why don't we just create a nice cozy oligopoly, right, and start raising our rates? And it may happen at some point, right? They'll hit themselves bloody for at least 3 years, 1,000 days, before they say, let's just do something more reasonable. So watch and see. You heard it here first. I hope I'm wrong. But now maybe do you want to move on to a story that you like, which is all about the Southeast Asia potential, right? So,
well, it's related to this first story, right? Because this is, of course, the report on the report by Google, Temasek, and Bain. This is the e-Conomy Southeast Asia report that they've been running for several years now. And I think it won't be a surprise to most listeners that the gist of the report is that there's been tremendous growth in Southeast Asia, tremendous growth in Malaysia. We talked about numbers. We're talking about Malaysia's overall internet economy will touch 21 US billion in GMV this year. And they're projecting 35 US billion by 2025. So when you look at that, when you look at the charts that show you how growth has been over the last 2 years, it certainly made a huge leap, right? And of course, everyone points to the pandemic and says this is what has driven digitalization, and it paints a very, very rosy picture for Malaysia. But I think the point I wanted to make, Karam, is that yes, the growth has been very good for Malaysia, but it's not only for Malaysia, it's been very good for all the countries in the Southeast Asian region. And in fact, I think if a country did not grow, then that would be bad news, right? I mean,
something very wrong. Yes, correct.
Yeah. So for all the terrible things that this pandemic has brought, it has forced companies to a corner. And Karam, you said something earlier just now, which was very interesting. You said when companies are scared, right?
Yeah.
So that's where,
only then, yeah. Only then will they move, right? Yeah, and be uncomfortable.
Yes, be uncomfortable. So I guess now the question is, giving the projections, there will still be growth in the next 3 years, but it won't be as steep a curve as it was over the last 2 years. I think that's how I can summarize it. Do you think, Karam, you agree with that consensus that companies that have started to go digital will carry on going digital?
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely. I mean, they are. The trend is there. It's not you. At some point, I'm going to drop the word trend. It's just the reality of doing business now. You absolutely have to be digital, and especially with IR 4.0, right? Which is especially for IR 4.0, a lot of it is around manufacturing. You have to, because otherwise you're not. And we said this so many times. Like, it feels deja vu now. I say you cannot survive as a business if you have not started to embed digital right into your operations, right? In whatever facet, you low-hanging fruit first, and then in the more difficult parts of the business to digitize, you absolutely have to. Otherwise, you're not going to be in business. Plain and simple, right? I cannot say it any more easier than that. But when you talk about this report, when you say all countries did well, I was especially intrigued by Thailand, because a lot of most Malaysian entrepreneurs don't look at Thailand because obviously language, right? And Indonesia, there's cultural similarities, whereas Thailand, there's no cultural similarities, right? It's kind of interesting. And yes. You look at Thai's economy. I mean, I think our economy, you're saying that by 2020, it will be 21 billion US by 2024, right? Or something. Or
21 billion this year in GMV, and then 35 billion by 2025.
Okay. So Thailand by 2025 is going to be 57 billion, right? So imagine the huge difference. So the potential there is immense. And actually, there is a Malaysian entrepreneur who has relocated to Thailand. I want to try to talk to him before the show today, but he's busy this weekend. So I'll connect with him on Monday, because I'm keen to understand the nuances of the Thai economy. And so that then I can start maybe encouraging Malaysian entrepreneurs to actually make a stronger concerted effort to be in Thailand. And I remember one of the startups we're talking about property, right? Speed Homes. So he has already set up a subsidiary in Thailand. And for sure, by the way, if you set up in Thailand, you cannot have a Karamjit Singh or a Dzof Azmi, or a Chua Kee Lock, going and then being your country head there, right? So you might as well just tell your accountant we're closing out the business and write off everything. You have to have absolutely a Thai person there, and then you have to have a fully Thai team. You can have some people from your country going there also, but the market is that hyper local. So you need to have locals there to grow the business. But 57 billion by 2025. That's nothing to scoff about, right? And they're a bit more, even more aggressive than Malaysia in adopting digital. So lots of potential there. And I'm just very interested in the Thai market now because of this report, and realizing that Thai market is really going gangbusters, right? E-commerce, which Ganesh told me about like 5 years ago, Ganesh Kumar Banga, right? From commerce.asia. He said e-commerce and especially gaming, the Thai market is big. But then, of course, you're a market of almost 80 million. They're just a shade under 80 million population. Of course, that makes sense, right? They're like 2.5 times Malaysian size. So it is a big market, right? So Thailand is interesting for me. This report highlighted that country to me. Malaysia, everything is you know where it's going, right? It's got its momentum of its own. Whether it goes faster or slower, we're going to get there at some point.
Okay, and the only thing I would just add to that, just to add to that, is that I think perhaps one of the things you're going to see in the next few years is that there are going to be Malaysian companies that are maybe some resistance are a bit slow to jump on the digital. What they will see, I suspect, is that the gap between them and their competitors who do go up is just going to widen. And there will be I don't know how to call it, like a digital gap, that's what I see.
Okay.
Potentially starting up. And the reasons why they cannot step up maybe, we're talking a bit about this, the reasons why they cannot step up may be more than just don't want, it might be more complex than that. So I think that may be something that we'll be looking at.
Definitely. So look, Dzof, we got to go on to the last article. And so look, the interesting news coming out from MDEC is that they've got a new chairman, non-executive chairman, and we put it in our headline very clearly, right? And this is actually an old friend of the minister, Tan Sri Anwar Musa, right? The communication multimedia minister, an old friend of his from his home state of Kelantan. And this is Muhammad Alwi. And, he's actually the member of parliament for, let me see, because I don't follow, or he's the state assemblyman, not member of parliament, sorry, for Kok Lannas, Kelantan. And he's held, obviously, a lot of opposition in government before. And he's actually been for 2 decades now, Dzof. He has been the chairman of Yayasan Kemiskinan Kelantan. So his poverty alleviation is important to him, close to his heart. So let's see if MDEC does a lot more for the, not B40, but the B or the B10, right? Or the B20 even, which we don't talk about, but it's the bottom 10%. Let's see if they focus a lot more on that area to help them digitize. That'll be interesting. But his appointment, maybe because the picture of him was in his bright blue suit, nobody said anything about this. But I think on December 1st, on Wednesday, the news broke that MDEC has also appointed, the news broke on like a Thursday, but they appointed her on Wednesday. A new board member is Izana, let me see, Saleh. And social media immediately jumped on the case because she is the daughter of the infamous Cowgate scandal CEO, Muhammad Saleh, who was formerly the CEO of Technology Park Malaysia. And the mother is Tan Sri, I think the mother is a Tan Sri already now, right? Sharizad Jalil.
Yes.
And
a strong woman.
Yeah, she was a former UMNO Wanita president. Okay, so people, when I say people, quite a number of people were not happy because they said that she's got no technology background experience, right? And you're putting her as a board member. And what I can tell you is for sure, in the history of MDEC board members, private sector people, she is I would use the term, the lightest candidate, right? The lightest board member MDEC has ever had. Say what you may about the previous chairman, Dr. Rais Hussain. If you look at the bio of the people that he brought on as MDEC board members, all very seasoned, very heavy corporate people, right? And nobody would doubt they know their space, okay? Whether it's corporate governance or whether it's health tech or it's as a CTO of a company, they knew their space. But she has got very, very little. The only thing standing for her is her credentials, is that she's got 2 master's degrees from 2 Ivy League universities. One is in Harvard, right? She did a master's in Harvard, and then she also did another master's in London School of, it's not London, so I think Imperial College. And it's one of the premier schools in London. She did a master's there. But when she came back here, she's been the CEO for 7 years of a company, and that turns out to be the company owned by a father. So you're the CEO of your dad's company, and by the way, you cannot find the website now. They may have had a website, but there's no website now. So I don't know what tech savviness she can bring to MDEC. So no wonder people are upset. And I look at it and I felt very pained. Okay, that either the minister Anwar Musa, recommended, because the appointment is officially made by MOF, but traditionally the minister will recommend, okay, these are my candidates for, or sometimes even the prime minister, right? My candidates for board member, and then MOF will approve it. So I've actually sent questions to the minister, Tan Sri Anwar Musa, have not got answers yet, whether he recommended her or the name was given to him by MOF saying that we would like to appoint this person as the board member. And then my second question was, what value did you see that she could bring, right? Seeing that she's a lightweight, and in my question to him, I said that she's a lightweight, a tech, have lightweight tech credentials. So let's see whether he answers or not. But yeah, this is definitely not a good move, in terms of MDEC, trying to say that they want to power Malaysia to be the digital, the heartbeat of digital ASEAN. Right, not a good move at all, I think. But as for the non-executive chairman, I will reserve my judgment until I start hearing what people saying he's doing or he's not doing. Hopefully, what he's not doing, yeah. But anyway, with that, even just talking about 3 stories, we already passed 20 minutes off, right? So we'll end the show today. We hope
and actually, I didn't want to say anything about this third step. As a former employee of MDEC, I reserve my comments right now.
There you go. Okay.
Yes, but I agree with you. Let's see what happens.
Right. So with that, we look forward to seeing you again next week. Please go and comment on the article. I know some of you have been liking the shows, right? Great. Please also put some comment and we'll engage with you, and we'll see you again next week.